Link to the Past was the first Zelda game that Red and I ever played, and we still rank it highly in the franchise, and going along with it being an awesome game, it really had some incredible and fun bosses.
Despite that, we were a little hesitant to try to put together a boss ranking just because some of these boss fights were so short, we didn't know we would have enough footage to put together a good quality boss ranking video.
And what we try to do is make each boss 30 seconds long like that particular section, but on some of these bosses, either we didn't have enough material or our awesome skills, we just killed them off really fast.
Awesome skills.
But some
awesome
of these sections are not 30 seconds long.
And you'll notice in this ranking we include both fights with Ganon. We felt that they were different enough and they were in different locations that the fights both warranted being included in our ranking.
Now always remember, these are just our opinions, and if you disagree with us, that's fine. If you agree with us completely over 13 bosses, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it would.
But as always, go ahead and leave your ranking in the comments section if you want to.
And if you hang around to the end of the video, you'll see our individual rankings where you'll see, as usual, Hick and I have our own disagreements as well.
This is our Link to the Past boss ranking. I have always hated Muldorm. I think a lot of other people do too. He's just such a difficult boss, and that platform was just a pain, and that hole in the middle, oh, I hate that hole in the middle.
And what makes it so difficult is the fact that if you get knocked off the ledge, it totally restarts the fight with Muldorm having full health. It's just such a pain in the neck.
And when he hits you, he knocks you back way too far.
I thought it was a really cool idea to get to face one of the major antagonists of the game, Ganon, this early on in A Link to the Past.
I kind of like that we actually got to go to Hyrule Castle also this early on in the game, and just find him in a Hyrule Castle just gave it a whole different atmosphere and feel.
And this fight did give us the introduction to deflecting magic orbs back at an enemy that we saw in a lot of later Zelda games.
And I liked his other attacks, like he had the blue bubbles or whatever you want to call them, and then also the lightning strikes looked very cool. Cold Stare is an icy boss, and it obviously fits an icy dungeon. I just love this first phase right here, coming down, using the Bombos medallion, and just getting it over with very quickly.
And the second phase is actually pretty tough. You've got these ice chunks falling down out of the ceiling and breaking in every direction, plus the 3 eyeballs themselves bounce around so quick.
It's a boss fight I didn't think it was going to be very difficult, but those things move around very quickly, and like you said, I hate those ice chunks.
This whole dungeon, we were begging for some swampy looking water, and with Vitreous, we finally got it, and I thought it made this boss look really cool.
Yeah, it did look cool, but at the same time, there wasn't much to it, and that was very disappointing this late in the game.
Especially the second phase, you just sit here and shoot arrows at the eyeball, you don't even have to move. It was just a very easy boss fight.
Mullahs was a really tough boss for being a second boss in the game. I just hate those dirt clods right there. Like, they don't seem that hard to dodge, but I had the hardest time dodging those things.
Well, between the dirt clots, then also having 3 of the Mullahs bouncing around, it really made it tough, especially, like you said, this early in the game, we have so few hearts to work with.
And like with their whole wavy motion and everything, it was hard to hit their head, but then once you got 2 out of the way, like, the fight became a lot easier, but he also shot more dirt clods at you.
Mothula, in my opinion, was the hardest boss in the game, but just speaking personally, I was a big fan of the challenge.
I really don't think that's opinion, I think it's a fact, but there's just way too much going on, and the floors moving was just mean.
But between that, you've got the spikes coming out of the wall, you've got these ring attacks that he shoots at you. It's just a really difficult boss with so much going on.
The blade traps, in my opinion, were unnecessary, but the whole ring thing, shooting rings, I really did like that. It was unique. I thought Armos Knights was a great first boss in the game. I love how there was actually 6 of them instead of 1 enemy.
Plus, I like how intimidating they look. They've got this giant shield and sword and the armor with like the horns on the helmet. They looked really cool.
I like how they jump around. I also think that kind of made them more intimidating. I like that we were able to use our bow and arrow this early on a boss.
And the change from the first phase to the second phase, where he changes color and totally changes his attack pattern, I thought made for a fun multi-staged boss this early in the game. I thought Argus was a perfect example of using the dungeon item in the boss fight. I loved using the hookshot to pull these little like puffballs away from its main body.
I love the shallow water we get in the boss room, and then also the snake fountains in the background. We talked about it all through Swamp Palace, so I love that they included it in the boss fight.
And how about the water effects we get, speaking of that shallow water, like when he comes down from the ceiling and splashes everywhere, and then also as he's scooting all around the room.
One of the coolest things about Blind the Thief is bringing her into this room, and then you have this innocent girl, and then she ends up becoming the boss.
And I love like the challenge that comes with this boss because there's so much going on between the flying heads, the fireballs, and the laser beams. There's just a lot happening.
I mean, any boss that has laser beams is cool, but then I also like her movement. Like, she was really wavy, and then she go like to the top part, then also the bottom part.
And the way she kind of just hovers above the floor, I thought adds to that as well. The second fight with Ganon was a little bit different from the first one in that we had 3 of them to go up against, and I really liked that change.
I like the whole evil look of the room. Like, you got that red and black flashing in the background, and just that reddish purple is just a really good color, and it fits with Ganon's tower.
And using the spin attack, I love that you could potentially deflect multiple orbs back at him at one time.
Helmasaur King is probably one of the coolest looking bosses in the game. I just love how big he is, and you can tell by how much of the room he takes up. And those spikes in the background are just a great little addition.
I love the idea of like blowing this face mask off of him so we can attack his main body. You see here us using bombs, but you can also use the hammer to do the same thing.
And I love when you get that mask off, you see his weak spot, and for once it's not an eye, it's actually on top of his head. I thought that was a great switch up.
Ganon is what the final boss of a game should look like.
Agreed.
He's rocking the cape, this giant trident. He looks like a total BA.
And then we got awesome conversation before the boss fight even started. We got the Triforce symbol on the floor, and I love how they switched up the music.
And also, like a final boss should be, he takes so many hits to kill off, even with our fully upgraded sword. It takes a long time.
I love the flashback to the original Zelda and have to shoot him with a silver arrow, and then when the lights go off, that adds a great atmosphere to the final boss fight. I did not see this whole fire and ice combo come with Trinix because we really didn't get any of it in the dungeon, but just worked out so well.
It did. I loved using like the fire rod on the ice head and vice versa, and I love the size of this boss. He takes up a good chunk of the room.
Yes, and the head thrust and like him wagging his tail before he did it, I loved. And then also that big huge explosion before the second phase. For guys, that's always awesome.
And the second phase being so much different from the first phase, trying to chase down this quick snake form, I thought was a great contrast.
Here are our individual rankings, and you'll notice that we have 1, 2, 9, 11, and 13 all the same. And to have 5 of them in the exact same spot, only over 13 bosses, that's quite a few.
And it's always nice when we have the top 2 spots the same like this, because we don't have to come up with some kind of tiebreaker or some kind of way to decide who gets those top spots.
There's been a lot of rankings where we had 1-2 switch. It's been very difficult to find out like which way we move them. But there are a couple bosses we had pretty like far apart. Argus was 7 spots apart, and then Mothula had the record in this ranking for being 8 spots apart.
But despite those big differences, all in all, I think we were pretty similar with how we ranked these bosses.